This is the largest skink in the entire world, the monkey-tailed skink from the Solomon Islands, and they make great pets for some people. So today let's go over how you can take care of one if you'd want one and why that is. My name's Adam, this is George, you're watching Wickens Wicked Reptiles, stick around. Of the dream species that I've talked about for the last 3.5 years since we started a channel, monkey-tailed skinks were often on that list because they're huge and they're beautiful and they've got something behind their eyes. Sometimes it looks like elevator music, but other times they look a little bit more intelligent than that. And that's why, for me, they're a dream species. And I've got 3. So let's go over how to take care of one, all about them, and maybe watch more videos just like this before you go out and get yourself something that is going to cost you a pretty penny. But we'll get to that at the end. First of all, I think the most important thing is size. How big does this animal get? Whether you want a kitten or a T-Rex, you need to know how big it's going to get before you get it. And these guys, like I said, are the largest skink in the world, up to 32 inches. So we're talking about 2.5 feet. These things are freaking big, bigger than 2.5 feet, really. Now, a lot of that includes that huge tail, which is very long, by the way. I would say probably their body length from snout to vent and their tail are about the same length. Their tails are big, their heads are big, their claws are big. Everything about them is big, including their appetites. We'll get to that in a second because it's a really weird diet for a skink. So a long skink and a girthy skink. So how would you put this thing in an enclosure? What type of enclosure would you need and the furnishings? Well, that's our second category and another really important one. Something that you might not know is these guys generally will need something custom. You can always put them into a 36 by 36 by 18, so 36 inches tall, wide, and 18 inches deep. But in my opinion, that's a little bit too small, especially for a group of them, because that's what they like to do. They like to be in groups, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But in terms of the size, most people would recommend for 2 or 3, a little group of them, something that's 6 feet by 6 feet by 2 or 3 feet deep. That's huge. That's something that is going to be custom made for you. You'd have to go to a Cages Custom Enclosures or something like that and ask them to make it for you, or make it yourself out of plywood or melamine or whatever, because Exoterra, Zoomeds, they don't really make stuff like that. So besides an 800-gallon enclosure, which is what it is, you want everything to be off the ground. So you can't put a coconut hut on the ground like with your leopard gecko or whatever. You need hides up above the ground because there are boreal lizards from the Solomon Islands. You're gonna find them in trees. That's why they have these crazy monkey tails, because they use them to hold on to things, just like a monkey would. And if you're wondering what prehensile tail means, well, prehensile means that they can grip things with that appendage, their tail, like he is with my hand right now. So make things high, make things long as well. Give them options to climb straight up like a tree, and also vertical branches. So cork tubes work great. I use cork bark, it's kind of expensive, but it's really safe to use. You can secure it really easily, and they can go inside of these for hides. So it's kind of like 2 birds with 1 stone.
Get 2 birds stoned at once.
And I would also recommend giving them a platform for eating as well. It depends. Like, some people will just put things on the ground, and that's fine. They can come down on the ground. But if you gave them a platform to put their collard greens, Swiss chard, stuff like that, I would recommend that too. Now, in this enclosure here, you're gonna see that there's a Universal Rocks background. They love this. They're gonna perch on here. They're going to bask on there in the UVB. Although they're nocturnal, they'll come out for an hour or 2 during the day, and each of them will use this Universal Rocks background, and they're gonna climb up this background. Honestly, this is the best product that's just ready to go for any enclosure I've ever made. It saved me a ton of time. It looks absolutely beautiful. And I'm very so if you live in Canada, you know, it's almost impossible to get Universal Rocks until now. This is not a sponsored ad. They're not paying me to say this, but if you go to the link below and you use the discount code, you're gonna get 10% off. They should kick a little bit back to me too. Full transparency, but at the end of the day, if you want Universal Rocks products, water bowls, backgrounds, whatever, I highly recommend this product. And you get 10% off just for using the code. So, Universal Rocks. Something else, no plants, or whatever plants you put, be prepared for them to try to eat them. So make sure that you've done your research and you're not putting something that might be toxic to them. Something interesting is, Pothos is generally toxic to most animals if ingested, where these guys will make a buffet out of pothos and have no issues whatsoever. So unique, but at the same time, they will try to eat everything. I tried to put a yucca plant in there, and I guess I didn't feed them close enough to the feeding time that day, and they just destroyed this thing. They ate it in one sitting. Next, heating, humidity, and lighting. Now, I'll do lighting first. It's pretty simple. They need a day-night cycle like most other things. So you can go 12, or you can go 16 hours on, 8 hours off. It's really up to you. I always do whatever the sun sets here and sun goes up here because they're in a place where light's gonna get through the window anyway, right? It just makes sense. But they don't need UVB, sort of. I recommend it. I give mine a 5.0 UVB. You could give them a shade dweller, something like that, but they're nocturnal animals, so they're not gonna be basking like a bearded dragon or Schneider skink or whatever. In terms of temperature, I don't even really recommend a basking spot with these guys like you would. Normally you get a cool end, you get a warm end, and then you get like, say, a halogen light or something to project heat onto a basking spot. With these guys, they don't tolerate heat very well. So 75 to 85, that's your thermal gradient during the day. Don't let it get above 85 in the entire enclosure. They can get exhausted from that type of heat. And then at night, you can offer them a drop. In Solomon Islands, there will be a night drop, unlike places like, I don't know, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, places like that where you think of tropical. So the Solomon Islands do sometimes have a night drop as low as 60 degrees, so that's fine too. And their humidity, always pretty darn high. They want a very humid type environment, not always, but at least make sure at night or there's spikes during the day where they have that type of humidity, and that's basically it. They're kind of easy from that standpoint. Now, I recommend you feed these things, otherwise they'll be less fun and stinky-er if you don't. Feed them or they'll die. And the way you'll feed it is an herbivore diet. So things like Swiss chard, collard greens, arugula, endives, like mustard greens, the staples that you'd feed things like bearded dragons and things like that, hibiscus even. But what's different is they actually like pothos. And by like, I mean they can tolerate and they love it. If I put a pothos plant, it's gone in an hour. These things are wild. All three of them, they live in the same enclosure and they will just devour this thing. So if you put greens in there, they're going to eat them, and it's really kind of easy in my opinion. Now, of course, with the diet, it's really important to supplement correctly. I recommend doing tons of research on this because it's not as simple as me just, I'll tell you what I do. I use a product, well, the company called Necton now. It's a company that was really difficult to get in Canada. Again, not sponsored. They sent me some of this stuff. I'll use this forever now. It's just a great product. Again, 10% off if you use the code right here. So I use the pure calcium most of the time, and then also the calcium with D3, and then a multivitamin as well. So 3 things. You could use different brands. It's up to you. I'm just telling you, this is the one that I use because I know you're gonna ask. And if you wanna use the same one in Canada, there's a code right here for you too. Now, in terms of behavior, they are fast and agile and crazy and difficult to handle. As I am, 15 minutes into filming this video and he hasn't even moved yet. So these guys are slow, they're deliberate. Now, keep in mind, they need socialization. This is something that I will hammer home in this segment. They need to be socialized young because they are not known for being cuddly creatures unless they're socialized young. Then they become beautiful, placid, awesome animals to handle. But if you don't socialize them, they've got huge jaws that really hurt when they come down on you. It's no joke. Like it's like a vice grip, basically. Also, these guys have insane claws. So if they're trying to get away from you, it reminds me of a cat. Like, I don't have any other animals that have claws like this. They feel like nothing else. Now, in terms of behavior, they're gonna use the tail to hold on to you, which I really like, and they're gonna wanna climb up you. They're arboreal animals. They are arboreal enough for the arboreal club. They're definitely going to wanna be above the ground. They're not gonna wanna be stationary below your head. They're gonna wanna get up on your shoulder, and just be careful, because if you get a bald noggin like me, you're gonna have scratches on it. My scalp is probably bleeding. Scalp is bleeding! Yeah! Thanks, George. These animals love being in groups. You could probably keep them one at a time. I don't recommend it. I got one and I felt bad. The more research I did, I realized I need more. The reason that I got more than one is because they like to be in groups. They do better when they're in groups. They feel more secure. They have a social structure. They will actually rear the babies. The babies eat the mother's poop, which is cool and interesting anyway, they'll actually kind of take care of the baby for a little bit. And when they do reproduce, they are live bears. They'll have one baby a year. Gestation is around 7 or 8 months, so pretty darn similar to human gestation period. And then they generally take a year off. So you'll get one baby every couple of years, and that's going to drive the price up. And that's the last segment we're going to talk about in a second. My point is, socialize when they're definitely super young. Make sure you put a lot of effort into the socialization and give them a social group. Don't keep them separately. They don't like that. And the last category, price, availability, and morphs. This is the scary stuff for most of us. It's not uncommon to see them at $1,300, $1,500, $1,600. You can get them as cheap as $700 if they're wild caught and not in great shape. But if you want something captive bred, it's gonna be over $1,000 US every time, no questions asked. So the price is up there and the availability isn't. And that's the thing, right? This is kind of supply and demand. If you have an animal that is very sought after, but there is very low supply, the price is going to go up. Think Dumerul's boas as a great example. Dumerul's boas, when I started this channel and started talking about them, $200, $100, cheap. Then the price skyrocketed because I imagine guys like myself and Clint had something to do with it and driving up popularity. But again, those animals take a while to reproduce. They're live bears. These guys produce one baby every year or every 2 years, every year if you're lucky. So they're hard to get your hands on, and the Solomon Island doesn't export like they used to, just in terms of numbers, quantity, I mean. As far as morphs go, this is actually a hypo. So it's a very different type of hypo. Like, it doesn't look the same as, say, like a hypo hognose or hypo boa, whatever. They're a little bit lighter, but not crazy. And in terms of other morphs, I don't really know of any. I also didn't do a ton of research because I don't care beyond this video. I love these animals because they're beautiful and I like interacting with them, and they're in my office and I like watching them move around. I don't care. I'm not in it for the money. If I reproduce them, great, but I'm not trying to sell them for tons and tons of money. And you're not going to make a ton of money off selling them either if you're trying to breed them. So in terms of morph, there's nothing crazy. You're not going to get a yellow one or a blue one or a pied. Like, I don't know that those exist. So price, availability, and morph, not really that available, kind of expensive, and not a ton of morphs. But don't let that deter you. I still think they're one of my favorite animals. They're absolutely amazing. I will keep them forever. I'll never not have one now. They're freaking awesome. And I wanted to say thank you. If you made it this far, thanks for hitting the like and subscribe button. Let me know in the comment, what do you think about monkey-tailed skinks? Should we do more videos on them? Do you want to see the build that we're going to do, a bigger enclosure for them? Let me know in the comment section below. And as always, a special thank you to the Patreon supporters. For as little as $1 a month, you get discounts on the merch, extra content. You know about the project I picked up last week that nobody else knows about. You saw the monkey tail enclosure last month. You knew about the monkey tails before anybody else did. For all that and more, it's just $1 a month. And that's it. Because I do videos twice a week, that means I'll see you in the next one.